Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Eddie Hearn recently stated he's open for business with Toprank, Golden Boy, on DAZN. Now that Toprank's deal with ESPN may be ending, and ESPN may so elect not to renew, Toprank are going to be in the market for a new broadcast partner. And Eddie Hearn has welcomed the potential arrival of Toprank to DAZN. Suggestions persist that the influential broadcaster ESPN will not renew its contract with Toprank, and the Toprank could therefore reach an agreement with DAZN to join there with, among others, Hearns' Matchroom, Queensberry Promotions, and Golden Boy Promotions, along with a host of smaller promotional outfits from all around the world. It's the global home of boxing. It may be tempting to interpret the arrival of Queensberry's Frank Warren and Golden Boy's Oscar De La Hoya, rivals with whom Hearn has long had a tense relationship, as capable of undermining Hearns' influence with DAZN, where he has been the streamer's highest profile promoter since leaving Sky Sports. But Hearn instead insists that their sharing a broadcaster makes his job easier, and he's right. If all those promotional outfits are housed on the same platform, networks don't get in the way anymore, the way that they used to. These guys fight over here, and those guys fight over there. All of these competing interests from one platform to the next. It makes fights difficult to make, difficult to negotiate. Top Rank's Bob Arum and Hearn have, similarly, been critical of each other in the past, but when asked about the possibility of them becoming allies, Hearn told Boxing Scene, "I'm sure they're gonna talk. They need to find a broadcaster. If the rumors are true about ESPN not renewing." What's going on at ESPN? Just a refresher. For a long time, ESPN was the biggest sports network in the country with a very strong budget because they got a piece of all those basic cable packages Americans were buying. But in case you haven't paid attention, many Americans are cutting the cord, which is cutting into ESPN's budget. Suddenly, they're not so strong anymore. Streaming being all the rage in the modern age, basic cable packages aren't what they used to be, and neither is ESPN. So there is a question as to whether or not they're even going to put up the money to keep boxing on their platform. Top Rank. The deal they entered into circa 2018 comes to an end later on this year. I believe it's towards the summer months. So will ESPN decide to renew with them or cut them loose and let them go? At this time, we really don't know. And if they let them go, would they be willing to migrate over to DAZN? Eddie Hearn stated, "I'd love them to come to DAZN." People always say, like when Frank Warren went there, "Are you all right with that?" I said, "Of course. We want more subscribers. The more subscribers on DAZN, the better for us, the better for our fighters, the better for our sport, the better for the platform. If Top Rank were to come on board, you're going to drive more subscribers." So I'm all for it. The promotional companies, the more of them, the better on the platform as far as I'm concerned. Warren's Queensberry agreeing to terms to join DAZN at the conclusion of its agreement with TNT Sports was preceded by Warren and Hearn starting to work together after the modern era's longest-term Cold War. Their apparent relative ease in each other's company is regardless not yet shared by De La Hoya and Hearn, who said, "I sat down with Oscar in Riyadh and I spoke to Eric Gomez, also of Golden Boy recently. What Turki LL Sheikh does really well is he's got no interest in that stuff. He thinks it's quite tedious. He sort of said it to a few of us a few times. Stop that. Just come on, and then you start spending time around people." Boxing is a very niche sport in America right now. It caters to a very specific audience. It's not mainstream. Like baseball or football or basketball, boxing really does take a back seat to those sports in this country. So you have to go to where that audience is. And if a good chunk of that audience is over there at DAZN, you have to consider it. Because it's not just a domestic audience, it's a worldwide audience available in so many territories, so many markets. There is an advantage to joining DAZN for Top Rank. Personal feelings aside, and professional rivalries, Eddie Hearn continued, "The problem with it is the industry. No one really knows each other. They've just seen an interview, heard something about someone, then you spend a bit of time with people socially, and you're like, actually, we could make money together. We could actually do good business together. It's very early stages with Oscar, but that's the potential that's there. Frank's the other level, where now we're planning all kinds of stuff together, and now we're on the same platform. I've always been one that just, let's get on with it. I don't hold grudges, especially now with so many people involved, not just DAZN, but DAZN. I've always felt that we should be doing a lot more business with Golden Boy, and hopefully now that looks like it's going to be the case. The pros of Top Rank joining DAZN for Top Rank is you're going to where the boxing fans already are. But this is a global streaming platform, you understand? It's not domestic, it's not just Americans like with ESPN. This actually gives you more markets to showcase your fighters. No political boundary lines, no bureaucratic red tape. Between you, Eddie, Frank, and Oscar, you can organize a schedule that brings boxing fans fights every weekend of the calendar year between the four of yous.
The Kumbaya scenario.
Where they work out a schedule that delivers boxing fans a fight literally every weekend of the calendar year. Between the four of them, that could happen.
The pros.
It's easier for you to make fights involving another promotional outfits as fighters when you need to. It's not as difficult as it used to be. The nightmare that you went through when Terrence Crawford was still your fighter and he was chasing that fight with Errol.
A PBC guy.
When Vasyl Lomachenko was chasing that fight with Gervonta Davis.
A PBC guy.
You don't gotta worry about shit like that anymore. Suddenly, making those kinds of fights on that scale becomes a lot easier because you're all housed on the same platform.
Advantages for them and advantages for us, because now we're getting all our boxing from one place.
And at one price, we don't need a bunch of subscriptions anymore.
That's the pro. Here's the con. If Top Rank were to theoretically migrate over to DAZN, you can expect a price hike. You can expect the monthly cost of a DAZN subscription to go up. It would have to in order to accommodate the stable they'd be taking on. Granted that the price hike is justified, at least to me.
A few more dollars for a DAZN subscription might still come out being less than what you were paying for ESPN Plus and those top-ranked shows when they were over there.
Might still come out cheaper than having to be subscribed to both DAZN and ESPN for boxing, but there are those whiners, there are those complainers, and this is just a heads up. If Top Rank theoretically were to migrate over to DAZN, there might be a price hike.
Do you think they will
Migrate over to DAZN?
I'm really not sure. A part of me feels like Top Rank would like to maintain a healthy amount of distance from what still is their competition, at least momentarily.
I don't know that they want to be all kumbaya with the other game in town. I don't know that.
They may value their autonomy and their independence away from all their competition, having their own lane, their own separate space, but of course maintaining that hinges on being able to find another broadcast partner. That if you don't continue with ESPN because they don't renew, you've got to go somewhere else.
So who else is trying to bring you on?
So maybe going to DAZN isn't your first choice. You don't necessarily want to be that close to all those other outfits, but what are your alternatives? What are your other options? Could you go to Peacock? Could you go to Netflix?
Have you been talking to anybody else? Is anybody else prepared to offer you something comparable to what you were just getting on ESPN? Because if they're not,
then you'd have to go to DAZN, since they'd be the only ones prioritizing boxing.
It's the global home of boxing.
And the exclusive broadcast partner of DAZN events. Now, this past Monday, Mike Kopinger tweeted, "Today at the Wynn in Las Vegas, sources tell ESPN, there was a meeting among promoters and boxing officials, including Top Rank CEO Bob Arum and WBC President Mauricio Suleiman, and one item discussed was how to deal with the upcoming arrival of the TKO Boxing League, led by Turki Sheikh, DAZN, and Dana White, UFC.
Of the UFC, who's been trying to break into boxing for years, but he hadn't figured out a way yet, a way to do that.
The TKO Boxing League, which hasn't been formally announced yet, is expected to debut this fall. You have to wonder, what will this league be comprised of? What fighters? From where? All the good ones.
The good ones are already spoken for. That didn't change.
But this is still a relevant development you want to pay attention to. The arrival of this TKO Sports in association with Turki Sheikh. A Twitter user that goes by the name 112 Sports reacted to the news by saying, "The fact that none of these promoters and bodies saw this coming is laughable. They all bent the knee to Turkey, and the double cross was always incoming."
Double cross?
He used their fighters and brands to ultimately promote his upcoming league and get his name out.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what this is, buddy.
All I see is what I've been seeing, that he's willing to work with anyone and everyone, Dana White included, and his proposed endeavor into the world of boxing. The reason I'm not worried about it,
I'm not overreacting,
is because a significant portion of this boils down to relationships and who you know. There are some things that money can't buy. The eye for talent, knowing how to groom and develop fighters at the proper time, how to market them. Turkey's got a very big war chest, and Dana may want to break into boxing, but that's an area that is largely alien to them because they've never done that.
When I think about Top Rank and all of this, their farm system and their ability to identify and acquire the very best amateurs.
They've got experience, the kind that Dana certainly doesn't have, or Turkey for that matter. What Turkey's doing is making the difficult fights that could not otherwise be made with the established names.
But he doesn't know anything about developing them.
And thus, if him and Dana are trying to form a league, what fighters is it going to be comprised of? Not Top Ranks or not somebody else's, because they still hold the contracts on those fighters, which are still actionable.
That doesn't change just because a few fighters made a few appearances on a few Riyadh season shows.
Those fighters still had to get the green light from their promoters. And thus, I think this 112 Sports guy is reading the entire situation wrong. What I do take away from this, however, and the meeting that took place earlier this week,
I like the Kumbaya scenario, where Top Rank crosses over to DAZN and everybody's over there, but it's not a given.
Top Rank may prefer to stay independent from everybody else in their own lane, on their own side of the street, and if they can procure an offer from a Netflix or a Peacock, I think they would take it.
Just to keep a healthy bit of space between themselves and what still is their competition.
If some other major broadcaster makes a play to bring them on board, but if one doesn't, then maybe they go to DAZN out of necessity in order to survive.
Then I could definitely see it happening.
But I don't presume to know what's going to happen next because there are a lot of moving parts here. A lot of people are assuming that ESPN will not renew.
They're losing the UFC this year.
I factor that into the equation as to whether or not ESPN will renew with Top Rank for boxing, because if you don't have one combat sport, you can still keep the other, and whatever resources you were using for UFC, you can then reallocate to your boxing. That's just a hypothetical scenario. Like I said, I don't presume to know what happens next. It's a fluid situation.
I like the Kumbaya scenario, where Top Rank migrates over to DAZN, and you get that much more boxing from one platform. But I don't know if that's how this is going to work out.
And finally, in men's super middleweight news, initial reactions are pouring in from the usual suspects, the usual boo-birds, in relation to the proposed Canelo Alvarez versus William Scull fight.
They don't like it.
A guy who goes by the name Boxing Pro stated, "Now we've got to hear 3 months of Canelo fans hyping up William Scull just to watch him lose to Canelo and then get knocked out in his comeback fight after that. Sound familiar?"
Yeah, it sounds like what you guys do with Gervonta Davis. It sounds like you're talking about yourself.
But at least Canelo is fighting a champion at his own weight. Unlike Gervonta Davis, who's fighting a super featherweight at lightweight again.
Ooh.
A popular imbecile on Twitter who goes by the name Ray Jackson said, "Clarissa Shields not knowing who William Scull is. I told y'all this fight is trash."
Then don't buy it.
I mean, it's not like you buy anything else you watch. All you do is steal shit. Guys like you are the reason every bodega's got a mirror at the top of every corner to make sure nobody's stealing the cookies and ramen noodles.
Bums.
Veteran content creator Boxing Ego said the GWOAT is unsure of who William Scull is, like most of us.
And that's fine.
So these guys are pretending that the Canelo faction of fans are hyping up this fight, hyping up William Scull in order to give Canelo maximum credit for beating him when he does beat him, when all I see from the Canelo fans are they're treating this fight like what it is, a prelude to something bigger in September. At the very most, it's a stay busy fight. that when you compete at the level of a Canelo Alvarez, a title fight against an unbeaten champion,
That can be a stay busy fight. That what would be one of the more credible scalps on, say, a David Benavidez's resume or somebody else's resume to Canelo, oh, that's just a stay busy fight.
he thinks that Riyadh Season is doing things backwards.
Never mind why, because this is the guy who preemptively blocks other content creators as to not have his views challenged.
No, I don't imagine this particular group of people, this particular group of boxing fans have been all that happy with boxing for the last 2 going on 3 years. It's been hard for them. Fox giving PBC the boot, Showtime giving PBC the boot. Remember how they used to rally against anyone who suggested that Showtime might leave boxing, calling us every name in the book?
It was these guys.
Who used to rail against anyone who suggested that he knew he could beat Stephen Fulton or that Terrence Crawford could beat Errol Spence Jr. Do you imagine they were happy with the outcomes of those fights? Or watching what was once their golden calf, Deontay Wilder, get trounced and embarrassed at Riyadh Season? No, I don't imagine they're big fans of Riyadh Season. Their real problem,
Turkey is who they pretended Al Heyman was.
Turkey has the means, the resources, the influence, the power that they wish Al Heyman had.
Their real problem.
They're not happy with anything going on in boxing unless Al Heyman is in control. But Al Heyman isn't, so they take issue with everything and everyone. Top Rank, Golden Boy, Matchroom, Queensbury.
You're telling me you're not excited about Canelo versus Scull. I don't expect you to be.
But you get excited to see Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach, who got outpointed, got outclassed by Jamel Herring.
Is that what gets you hot?
Gets you off? Paying $80 to see that schlock? Maybe. This is the same guy who was oohing and awing over Gervonta Davis's braids and leg tattoos. They watch boxing a bit differently than I or you.
For different reasons.
Being honest, I'm surprised a good number of these people are still around because most of the guys they get behind, most of the guys they like,
They're inactive and circling the drain. The brand of boxing they like the most is doing the least shows.
only 5 last year. I say it all the time.
Just 5.
Turkey has delivered not 1, but 2 historic undisputed fights and a host of other good ones, ambitious matchmaking, and they're not happy. They're not gonna be because he's not Al Heyman.
So when that's the root of your problem, nothing's gonna satisfy you. Nothing's gonna make you happy.
When do you see these people happy about something that's going on in boxing? And it's not gonna get better. Do you think they're all of a sudden gonna start liking Top Rank or start liking Matchroom? You think all of a sudden they're gonna start caring about world boxing?
No.
So of course they're not happy with the Canelo versus Scull fight because it cuts PBC out of the deal and out of the picture.
Good riddance.